I would like to discuss about the relationship women have with men. The divine feminine loves growth. We are always fertile and we are always connected to the moon. That makes us very receptive to evolution, to rhythms, cycles of change. We welcome change into our life because we understand death and rebirth is a part of the Renaissance. It's how we're able to be more creative. So growth to a woman is creativity, right? Growth can be seen as evolution. Whenever you look at a Renaissance, right, it is participating in an age of light, right? We call the age of reason, the age of enlightenment, a renaissance within science and renaissance within poetry or music. Basically, there is a death and rebirth, there is growth. And that growth takes place within the fire of a woman's heart, right? So when we are shut down in our heart chakra as women, what happens is the articulation of our feelings, right, can get too heated, it can get too cold, right? So we mediate our emotions as a woman through the opening of the heart, right? So, the heart energy can get too hot, right? We have this excess heat that can be of resentment, anger, frustration, right? So then we can become quite explosive, right? And that can be a destructive sensation moving through the body, right? Like self-hate, shame, judgment, feelings of not being good enough is a lot of heat, excess heat that's built up within the emotional body, right? That we alleviate through moving the heart chakra, right? And that's why you see women in all forms of artistic expression, such as dance, and there's this great act of liberation, right? And this is an ancient practice where women early on are initiated into a dance, and that dance usually is sort of a story. You're telling a story about the tribe, right, that you belong to as a woman through the sort of dance, right? And usually these dances can be performed throughout many generations of women, right? And that's a way of women sort of alleviating that sort of excess heat within the heart chakra, right? And men, they can create a lot of excess heat in the navel point, right? So for men, it's about being physical, it's about wrestling, right? You're wrestling with the mountain if you're rock climbing. You're wrestling with the ocean if you're surfing, right, or snowboarding. It's a kind of you're tapping into your gut, right, to alleviate the excess heat that can come up for men, as in like sort of potency issues, right? Sex drive issues. It can come up as sort of stagnation. It can come up as frustration in one's body, right? That men actually have a lot of frustration in the body, right? That can cause a lot of stress and overall can cause a lot of, again, the lackluster type of thing, right? The low courage, the low self-esteem, right? So growth, we are driven by growth, right? As a woman, right? We're driven by the moon phases and the evolution. We're very in sync with that. So with men, men can be more linear, right? As we're more spherical. So, woman's hips is so spherical, it's so, multidimensional. While, men's hips can be really linear, like just parallel, going through life forward and back, side to side, right? So with men, what you can do to really connect, right, with your own heart energy so that you may receive a woman is to work on your emotions, right? So, men are taught early on, very early on, sex money, food, water, right? And men can feel quite insecure with sex, money, food, and water, right? So there's a lot is very competitive. You got to chase it, you have to control it, you have to dominate, right? So that can feel very, very hard on a man's heart chakra, right? A lot of men shut down the heart chakra, the emotional body, right, in order to survive in the kind of work slave mentality that our society kind of presents to men as this is the only way that you'll be able to quote unquote make it, right? So when a man begins to open his heart, he becomes quite a rebellious man, right? In the way that he is passionate about basically learning what it means to articulate his feelings and to express himself, right? And there are many men who been really shut down in their heart energy, have a lot of difficulties with intimacy and being honest, right? Being vulnerable, to actually being very honest and being very vulnerable and creating intimacy. Because I do believe intimacy with a woman, right, is the most exciting, exhilarating state. It's very inspiring because, again, a woman represents so much growth to a man, right? When we are very much in that kind of creative energy with the heart, with our own heart. So our journey as women is to really connect with the evolution of creativity, to really represent the Renaissance, right? So we're naturally really rebellious in many ways when it comes to, money, sex, food, and water, right? Because we already have embedded in us, in the femme consciousness, that we can create our own reality through our resilience, right? And that's why we as this planet are able to survive very difficult experiences on this planet, right? Is because of our resilience, because we have embedded in us this ancient knowledge, this ancient sort of practice of women who understand the death and rebirth, understand that this earth and the great cosmos is driven by the force to be reckoned with, which is the sort of creative resilience that we have. And men, they want to take part in that because that gives them this liveliness within their own heart, right? A woman's flame of the heart very much, becomes his flame of the heart, right? So, a lot of men say, she is my heart, right? She is my heart and soul. You hear that a lot. And even men can say that to their mother, right? Or their grandmother or their sister, like, she is my heart and soul, right? That's something, you hear a lot. And basically what that's saying is that she provides a growth, a sort of evolution within myself that encourages me as a man to initiate myself further into what it means to be a man, right? And, as a man's evolution has a lot to do with opening up the heart, right? And sort of overcoming that kind of work slave mentality that the masculine energy on this planet was not necessarily in a particular gender, right? Just the masculine energy is really caught in this work slave mentality that's very aggressive, very competitive. You're chasing, you're hustling, you're hassling, and to get what you want, right? Sex, money, food, and water. But the heart energy of a man, when that begins to open, there's a sort of a soulful and sort of philosophical nature of a man that you can't really tap into in that particular work slave mentality, right? And even women, we have that kind of masculine energy within us, right? That kind of desperation, that kind of I'm not enough, and that low self-worth, right? So when the man opens up his heart in many ways, he starts to articulate his feelings, connect with his own poetry, right? That's when he's starting, we can say, rebel against the work slave type of society, right? And really starts to connect with the personal power he has, that every man has, to basically connect with energies on this planet that you may not necessarily be seen on the news, or seen in that kind of, it's not going to be on a billboard presented to you, right? It's kind of hidden in plain sight. But these type of energies that have everything to do with a man's greater accomplishment, right? Which is to have that kind of emotional fulfillment, right? Is to have that kind of intimacy, that union with this earth, right? And many times that work slave stuff, sex, money, food and water type of seeming this constant hassle, that is always this hassle. It's in the burden of it, in the never enough, in the lack, in the sort of you can feel very, very bound to it, right? The only way men can really liberate that ego, right, is through the opening of the heart and the expressing of his love, right? So in a sort of practice of that, you'll see men tapping into their artistry. That could be their poetry, that could be their music, that could be their dance, it could be their chant, it could be their sort of yoga, their meditation, their writing, right? And that basically makes them available to a woman, right? When we're available to our creativity as a woman, we become more available to a man, right? Because our highest self-worth is when we're parting in an ancient practice of death and rebirth, when we're actually connected to the rhythms and the cycles and the moon phases of this earth. That's when our self-worth is highest as women, right? And for men, their self-esteem is highest when they are in their personal power, and they're having that connection to a reality that makes them feel free, right? Like a wild man, I feel free as a man, and I feel, you can have the sex, money, food and water, and the ego needs to needs to have some sort of security with that, needs to lock it in and have some kind of knowledge with that, right? But what really sets a man free is of the emotional fulfillment he has, and his ability to be soulful and philosophical, and be honest with himself, right? To grow within the emotional body. While us as women, we grow so much through the creative energy, through the radiant energy, through the intelligent energy, right? So I wanted to discuss about the relationship between women and men, and how we can create harmony, which is really about the harmony, the harmony with her own creativity, and these ancient practice of the rhythm, cycles, phases of the moon and evolution. That's so nourishing and so fulfilling, because it expands you, right? And then for men, it is about the tapping into one's emotions, right? That basically makes him available to a woman, and makes him available to himself, for that harmony. So it's that heart harmony that really makes us available to connecting, right? And without that heart harmony, it's our connection. We become quite doubtful as women, right? We're very doubtful, right? Because our self-worth, we need to raise it, right? And then men, they become quite fearful and afraid to grow, or afraid to take chances with their own heart and express themselves, because of the fear to really be seen, right? And to really rebel against these ways in which men try to hide, due to society shaming and judgment and all that kind of stuff, right? So that the heart harmony is really about the rebellion that happens, where you as a woman are just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna creatively just be resilient and sort of revolutionary, and just move and shake stuff, and just hell with it, right? And then for a man, it's like freedom, like let freedom ring, like I need to connect with my emotions, and I want to have intimacy as a man, right? I want to connect with my poetry, so fuck it, I'm just gonna be free, and not be so fearful about the reaction from society, with the shame and the judgment and all that. And that is the state of liberation, that kind of exalted connection relationship men and women have.